Mobile games are on Nintendo Switch, but what's better, the mobile version or the Nintendo Switch version? Are some of them graphically worse? Are some of them better with the controller? Let's find out. Starting with everybody's favorite game, Fortnite. I know, because Fortnite does well on my channel. See? Everyone loves Fortnite. If you've literally seen any videos about Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch, or, played it, you already know that Fortnite on Switch is practically broken. Okay, not completely broken, but compared to other consoles, it's inferior. Now, I love Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch when I'm in a pinch, or if I want to get views. And honestly, that's the great thing about Fortnite on the Switch, the convenience and portability. But wait, if you love those things, then theoretically I should love the mobile version too, right? Because obviously, to the average Joe, a phone is always in your pocket, whereas the Switch isn't most of the time. And if it is, comment what pair of pants you're wearing. Here's the thing, I actually can't play Fortnite on my phone, and a lot of you probably can't either, because, well, I live in North America, and I'm an Apple user, meaning it's impossible for me to play this version. So I had to track someone I knew down and force them to download Fortnite on their Google Pixel 9 just so I could play it for this video. Now, if you played Fortnite at all recently, you'll know that there are multiple games within it. Got Battle Royale, Lego Fortnite, Rocket Racing, Festival. Literally, if anyone can make it, there's probably a game about it inside of Fortnite. And that's the joy of it. But for today's video, I'm mainly focusing on Battle Royale. As soon as I booted it up on mobile, I was honestly just impressed that it even exists. But I've been playing Fortnite for a while now, and I've never seen anyone actually playing the mobile version. It almost feels like a myth, but I assure you, it's real. I think the biggest difference between this and the Switch version is the controls. And before you comment, you can just get a controller? Yeah, I know. For this video, I'm not going to use one, because if I were to carry around a controller, I might as well just bring my Switch. I'm testing whether the enhanced portability of a phone is worth dealing with touchscreen controls. I'm not about to walk around carrying both a phone and a controller. And yes, I know backbones exist, and I actually like it, but it's not a thing in this video. Now, the controls are extremely difficult to get the hang of. First of all, I had to figure out what each of these random symbols even did. And then actually using them gracefully was the hard part. I kept forgetting which buttons to click and how to do basic movement mechanics, like crouching. Normally, I crouch all the time on the Switch version, but on mobile, I just never did. The touchscreen is way too finicky for me to even care about crouching. In fact, the controls are so awkward that they completely changed the way I play. On console, I'm a lot more strategic, but on mobile, I just became way more aggressive because I knew that if anyone got too close to me, I couldn't defend myself. So that's why I didn't really care about running out in the open. The controls were just way too complicated for me to even try to be good at the game. On top of that, I didn't feel like I even needed to defend myself because, ladies and gentlemen, we got bots. My first 2 rounds were easy, and I know that your first game is usually full of bots, but multiple rounds were so easy that it just wasn't even fun. I also can't imagine playing against real people with these controls. That would probably be impossible. Now, there was one strange benefit of using mobile, and that's the aiming. But before we get into that, today's video is sponsored by OBB, featuring their brand new game, Beast: BioXo Arena Suit Team. This game is now available on Nintendo Switch, and I've been having a ton of fun with this. In Beast, you play as both massive robots and fast-paced pets, switching seamlessly between a powerful mech and an agile pet character, like my boy, Clyde. Look at him go! In this game, you'll need to strategize when you bring out the heavy firepower or rely on speed and mobility. It's a 3v3 multiplayer shooter that's absolutely goated online, but that's not all. There's also a full offline campaign for solo players, and if you love variety, good, because there are a lot of heroes to choose from, each with their own unique abilities. And listen to this. Come here. No microtransactions. It's just a one-time purchase of $9.99, and during launch week, you even get a 15% discount, which, by the way, is right now. So now's the best time to jump in. It even features the Switch's gyro controls. Let's go! Beast is already a hit on Apple Arcade with a 4.6 star rating, and it comes from the same team behind Frag Pro Shooter, which has over 2 million downloads. Check it out now using the first link in the description and my pinned comment. Thanks to OBB for sponsoring this video. It's now time to proceed. While both devices have aim assist, mobile actually cranks it up way more, to the point where it feels like I'm cheating. It even has a feature that automatically shoots when an enemy is in your sights. This is probably the only real gameplay benefit of using touchscreen controls, and honestly, it's a wild one. Now let's talk graphics. By default, the game runs at 30 frames per second on low quality settings on mobile. And the Switch, well, the Switch is just the Switch. You get what you get, which means 30 frames per second, low resolution, and minimal graphical enhancements. But here's something I didn't realize at first. The mobile version actually lets you adjust the settings. Mobile lets you crank up the graphics to epic and even pull off 60 frames frames per second. At first, I thought there was no way that the phone could handle that, but it did. It got really hot in my hands, but it did. And honestly, the game looks pretty good on mobile. Not high-end PC or current-gen console good, but like PS4 good. If you turn the graphics up, you get much better lighting and textures compared to the Switch. My guess is that mobile defaults to low settings to save battery, or to make people who haven't upgraded their phone in 10 years feel a little less bad. That said, no matter what graphics mode you choose, even on the highest setting, the mobile version still suffers from the incredibly low resolution, severe popping, almost worse than the Switch, and major hitching. Meanwhile, the Switch version, while it's not the prettiest, at least doesn't have big stutters like the mobile version does. Overall, mobile is graphically appealing, and the frame rate is literally double. But without a doubt, using a controller is the way to go, even if that means playing on the Switch. And look, I know I'm not counting controllers for mobile games in this video, but if I did, mobile probably would have won. But with no additional controllers on mobile, I gotta give this to the Nintendo Switch. Next game! People were mad at me for not putting these games in my last video. And that's of course Nintendo games on mobile, specifically the Pokemon games that are on both platforms. Let's look at Pokemon Quest. I've developed a newfound love for this game. It's like a dungeon crawler, except you don't really have to do anything, because it has like an autoplay setting. I like that. I recently played it on mobile when I went through every Pokemon mobile game, and I can tell you now it's much better on mobile because of the touchscreen. The Switch version of Pokemon Quest uses this weird cursor system, and I hate it. It gets the job done, but it completely changes the pace of the game. There are a ton of menus and sorting that need to be done, like applying badges to Pokemon to make them stronger. And by far, a touchscreen is a much better and faster option for all of this. Performance-wise, no complaints on either version. The Switch runs the game at 60 frames per second, and so does mobile. But when it comes to the controls, the mobile version is a clear winner. Hold on a second. Before you say it, I know the Switch has touchscreen, but when you're on a phone, it's just way easier to click everything, because you can use your thumb. And also, I was playing this game on the TV. So now while we're on the topic of Pokemon, let's talk about Pokemon Unite. This game is actually pretty decent. I like the concept, and it's probably one of my favorite MOBA games I've ever played. But that's because it's the only MOBA game I've ever played. Now, Pokemon Unite is very similar on both mobile and Nintendo Switch, but I definitely like the Nintendo Switch version better, and that's because, well, the controls. The controller and analog stick on Switch are so much better. Not only do you get an actual physical stick instead of a digital one, but it also makes it easier to see what you're doing. One big flaw about mobile games in general is the fact that your thumb literally covers part of the screen. Now, I originally thought my phone would run Pokemon Unite better because, let's be real, it's way more powerful than an 8-year-old Nintendo Switch. But turns out, the Switch version looks better. Now, this is debatable and the graphics aren't that different, but I think because Nintendo optimized this game specifically for the Switch's hardware, they were able to squeeze out the best performance possible. Plus, I was playing on a TV, which makes even minor graphical differences stand out more, which means I could see better graphics bigger. On top of that, the game runs at 60 frames per second on both devices, which is a huge plus for Switch. But still, because of the TV and the controls, this is definitely going to the Nintendo Switch. Next up, we've got a bit of a goofy one. Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. Both of these versions are very similar. The only real difference is the UI. On mobile, you got a digital analog stick and a massive on-screen button for the item you're using. But with pixelated games like this, there's barely any difference because the game is so simple to run. Both versions run at a smooth 60 frames per second, so there's no performance advantage either way. One small benefit some of these games have on Switch is the physical version, because yes, they actually printed a physical cartridge for this. The collector side of me loves this, but at the same time, because it's on Switch and physical copies exist, it gets hit with what gamers call Switch tax, which basically just means it's more expensive on Switch for no reason. So yeah, it costs more on Switch, so I mean, I guess if you're on a budget, then the mobile version. But I prefer playing games like this with an actual controller, so this one goes to Nintendo Switch. Now for an absolute classic, Octodad. If you've never played it, Octodad, Deadliest Catch, is a game where you can control an octopus who's just out here doing normal human things. Except he's an octopus. And somehow, nobody notices. He even has kids, and I don't know how that happened. But I think it's best if we don't ask. The controls on Octodad are infamous for being confusing and ridiculously intricate, which is perfect for the concept. On Switch, each button controls a different limb, and you move the limb using the joysticks. It takes a while to get used to, but I've beaten Octodad a handful of times, and I'm now a pro on controller. On mobile though, you control the limbs with the touchscreen. You drag his arms around horizontally with a single swipe, or use 2 fingers to move his hands vertically. You can go into leg mode and swipe up to get his legs moving, and grab items just by tapping it. The mobile version sounds a lot easier, and it probably is for beginners. But after playing with the controller for so long, I actually find it much easier on Switch. Of course, if I were being real or a true gamer, PC is the best way to play this game because of the mouse controls, but still, mobile is probably the easiest to pick up if you're new. Graphically, it's identical. In fact, Octodad can run on almost anything. I remember playing on an old Mac that has has to be at least 15 years old at this point, and it ran just fine. So both versions run at 60 frames per second, which is great. But if you haven't played it before, mobile is probably the way to go. The touchscreen controls are just easier to get used to. Next up, Hello Neighbor. Now, if you guys are OGs, you might remember that this was on my list of the 24 worst Switch games ever, and rightfully so. But is this game any better on mobile? Well, booting it up, you can instantly tell that there's a big graphical difference. The resolution is much better on mobile, which I can appreciate. Oh, and there's actual grass on mobile. Who could have seen this coming? This game generally doesn't look good on any platform, but somehow the Switch version manages to make it look even worse, and unnecessarily so. I have no idea why such a basic game with simple controls can't run at a decent resolution. This is without a doubt one of the worst looking games to exist on this platform. But looks aside, this game is still plagued with one major problem. The game itself isn't that good. I have no idea how this franchise got as popular as it is, but I could not figure out what to do for the life of me. I just kept running around trying not to die. I know this has nothing to do with the device I'm playing on, but just in general, the game's design is flawed. But still, with all the random jumping, smashing, and general chaos, one version is actually superior. And surprisingly, it's the Switch. For whatever reason, jumping and moving the camera on mobile is so finicky, and jumping alone feels incredibly delayed, and the movement is just too floaty. It makes an already confusing game feel even more frustrating to play. Oh, also, this game has ads on mobile, and it just pops up out of nowhere. Really don't get this game on any platform. But if you had to choose, I guess go with the Switch. At least it has a physical version, and I like physical versions of games. Next up, Rayman. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with this Rayman fella, but also a lot of you might not be. The last time he was playable in a game was in the Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope DLC, and that was great. But before that, his last real game was over 10 years ago with the release of Rayman Legends. Rayman Legends was a 2D platformer with 4-player co-op, and let me tell you, it was fantastic. It was full of life, had an amazing art style and graphics, and best of all, the game was actually good. This game came to Switch and it was an absolute banger. But Rayman also came to mobile, which is why we're talking about him today. Except this time, it's a little different, because this game isn't quite the same. Let me explain. At first glance, it looks very similar to Rayman Legends, but on mobile, they released Rayman Mini. The main difference here is that instead of moving freely within a level, the mobile version forces you to run non-stop. Rayman is always moving, which means you have to time your jumps and attacks on the fly. But don't worry, he still has all his iconic moves from the Switch version. You can still hit, jump, and glide, all using the touchscreen controls. And because it's an auto runner, we don't have to deal with a silly digital joystick, which is literally the worst. Obviously, the level designs are completely different because of this, but I bring this game up because it's one of the best examples of a console franchise adapting to mobile in a way that actually works and is, unique. In Rayman Legends, there were these musical-based levels where you'd constantly run to the beat of the song, and those were personally my favorite. Rayman Mini takes that entire concept and builds an entire game around it. And graphically, the mobile game looks stunning compared to most mobile games or ports we've seen. They literally took a ton of assets, including the entire characters, and brought them over to this game. This actually feels like a real Rayman experience. Oh yeah, this game does have unlockable characters and costumes, just like the full-blown Switch version. Now, the Switch version does have the Mario and Luigi costumes, but still. Now, overall, the mobile version isn't as good as Rayman Legends. There are a lot of missing features like the local co-op, but I think it's a great example of how console games should be adapted to mobile. It's a fun one to check out, for sure. Next up, LEGO Brawls. There are plenty of LEGO games on both console and mobile, but I chose this one because I specifically remember hating it on the Switch. I played every LEGO game on Nintendo Switch, and this one came in dead last. I mainly couldn't stand the Switch version because of the bland graphics, horrible audio balancing and quality, and constant lag spikes right in the middle of the battle. So does the mobile version really change any of that? At its core, the gameplay is the same. You take your little LEGO guys and fight in 2D brawler style free-for-all, with random objectives like capture the flag. The game itself is fine, but it gets really boring and repetitive fast. The combat is pure button mashing, and after just a few rounds, you've basically seen all the game has to offer. First off, unlike the Switch version, mobile's performance is actually better. There's way fewer frame drops during gameplay, and graphically, by golly, look how much better the mobile version looks. I have no idea why the Switch version looks the way it does. I know I'm probably being a little too hard on it, but still. And of course, we have to talk about the audio. For some reason, the mobile version's audio is way more balanced than the Switch version. I don't know why, but it is, and that's good. Now, like I said, the core flaws of the game are still there, but at least the glaring issues in the Switch version seem to have been cleaned up. As for the controls, since the game's controls are already already super basic for a fighting game, mobile controls didn't bother me nearly as much as I expected. This one definitely goes to mobile. Once again, huge shout out to OBB for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check out Beast in the description. And if you want to see me play even more popular mobile games on Nintendo Switch, click this video. And hey, consider becoming a channel member to support me, see exclusive videos, and get your name at the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one. See you later.